What's going on, guys? It's your boy TBG back again with another Digimon video. Today we're going to be going over the winners and the losers of the April 1st ban list for the Digimon TCG. Now, the only new product we get is the BEELZEMON starter deck, but we will have two or three regionals before set 12 drops that will be using this ban list, as well as the BEELZEMON starter deck. So I wanted to give you guys a quick tier list for this. Now, it's not going to be like my last tier list I did where I had all the weaknesses and the pros and cons of each deck. I'm going to have something more like that when set 12 is about to come out. But I just wanted to go over this quick overview so people could have an idea of what to take for this first regionals of 2023. That being said, let's hop right into the tier list. What's going on, Digimon? It's your boy TPG back again with another video. Today we're going to be ranking the winners and the losers of the new ban list. Now, only one card did get banned, and that was Greymon X Antibody from BT11. It got limited, excuse me. But that actually shakes up the format quite a bit, considering that that deck was the gatekeeper for the top contenders. So let's hop right in. First off, we have Venusmon Control. Now, Venusmon Control is weird because, like, the yellow hybrid recovery stuff's pretty good, but the actual idea of this deck is minusing security attack. Now, Greymon X did trash security, so I think this deck gets a little better, but for now, we're just going to put it in, like, probably B or C tier, I imagine. I'm going to put it in B tier for now. Dark Knightmon. So how is let's think, how is Dark Knightmon really affected by Greymon X Antibody? Well, for starters, Greymon X Antibody was this untouchable body that just, you couldn't really remove from the field, right? So, and it was a blocker. So that sort of indicates that, well, that held Dark Knightmon back. And if we're looking at the Ultimate Cups, I'm actually seeing a rise in Dark Knightmon usage. And I think it's because of the limitations on Greymon within the Ultimate Cups. But it's still not doing a whole lot. That being said, I think it's better than it was. I would have put this deck down here, but I actually think it's probably around B tier right now. D Brigade. Let's see. We have access to Death Examon. The deck's actually pretty good. I think this deck's one of the best rushdown decks we have in the game. It had a pretty bad Black WarGreymon matchup. I'm gonna put D Brigade in A tier. I actually think this deck kind of can do a lot now. Eosman. This deck was not hindered by Black WarGreymon for the most part. It was actually hindered by how shit this deck is, so it's D tier. Deck's not good. BEELZEMON. So Prim got top 32 at Nationals with this deck, and I'm seeing a lot of people say this deck is really good. Black WarGreymon's a odd matchup because of how much protection it has, but also I think security bombs is going to be one of the defining things of this format. That being said, because of all the options that BEELZEMON plays, it's going to shut things down like Grandas and whatnot. So I actually think that BEELZEMON is an... I don't know if I want to put it in S tier or A tier. We're going to put it in A tier for now, and then I'll reevaluate S tier and see if it should get moved up. But I think this is actually a very strong contender into what in my head is already going to be the best decks. Jet Sylphie, this is just yellow hybrids, which should already be played with Venusmon, in my opinion. So I could either put it with them, but without Venusmon, it's probably like C tier. Yeah, it's like C tier. Blue hybrid. Blue hybrid, guys. This deck's actually kind of sleeper still. One Tommy sucks, but if they see their one Tommy, like, that's really good. We're gonna put it in C tier for now, but it could potentially be a bottom of B tier deck. Regular WarGrey X, I think, is definitely going to be stronger now with Black WarGreymon and not being able to redirect. That being said, I don't quite think it's an S tier deck. I think it has really good matchups, but because it bricks upon itself, I think it's probably A tier. I'm going to put it in front of Commandramon for now. Melga. So this is the first deck that I think is actually a really big winner. I think this deck is probably one of the best decks in the format. So I'm going to put it in S tier. This deck's worst matchup was Black WarGreymon. Now, that deck's not going to be completely unexistent now. It's still going to be very strong, especially with only one Greymon X. But the big thing is now they're going to have to be playing black base with if they want that protection, like more consistent protection. Or they're gonna have to be playing red base with the BT9 Greymon X. But the BT9 Greymon X is actually harder to trigger and keep all your powerful effects that you usually want to keep, which means people are likely going to stop playing Black WarGreymon. I think Black WarGreymon's still very good, but because of the fall off, Melga actually gets quite a large buff. So that being said, Melga is definitely an S tier deck. Armor. This is probably like Royal Knight Armor. I'd say like that one that did really good with Justmon GX and stuff. I don't know. This deck like went crazy for like one tournament. Everyone played it and like started playing it, and then no one ever kept playing it. So I don't really know how this deck's matchup is into Black War, but I don't think it's too bad because Justmon GX on its own sort of beats Black WarGreymon. But that being said, just because I don't think the deck's very strong or popular, I'm gonna put it in B tier. Grandas. So Grandas is definitely a deck that everyone thought was a winner. Everyone thinks the deck's a winner, and I still think it's probably one of the best decks in format. So Grandas is definitely an S tier deck. However, what I said about Beelzemon is now that Black WarGreymon is much more susceptible to deletion and bouncing, as it doesn't have nearly as much protection. Grandas sort of takes a nerf from that, right? Because Melga's going to be playing more Cocytus Breaths or Metal Storms. Beelstar's going to be playing, everything it plays. Most decks are now, they were probably playing 1 to 2 removal options in their deck before for rogue matchups, but most of the times those just would not come up against Black War because they just can't do it most of the time. But now people will probably play 2 to 4. So I think that's definitely going to be a factor in Grandas, right? Because Grandas, the goal, you want to check all 5 security and then swing for a game. Well, if you get stopped on security number 3 by hitting an option, then I don't really know what to tell you. Alphamon. So Alphamon or Yukin. How do we feel about this, guys? Because honestly, this deck is something that's I think has a lot of potential. Not quite S tier, but probably A tier. But at the same time, it's held back by not. Once we get another WarGreymon, this deck will be very good. I don't care if it's a vanilla. This deck will probably be up here. But for now, I'm gonna put it in B tier, right? Because if you see that Greymon line and you see your line, cool. But it's still not nearly as effective as it once was with that 3 copies of WarGreymon. Bloomlord and Hydramon, I think people are going to start revisiting more now that we've had Ultimate Cups and we've gone back to playing this deck a little bit. I actually think this deck's probably going to surge in popularity because of, it's incredibly cheap. You can build this deck for $30. It's super cheap. Also, this deck's really good in these alternate formats, which means more people are going to have it and more people are going to assess it in these metas. But it's sort of a tool, a jack of all trades toolbox deck. I'm actually going to put it in A tier. That might be a hot take, but Hydra has those matchups for when you need to control the board, and then Bloom has those matchups where you just need to out tempo and swing for game. So because of that and how wide these boards can go, I think it's very strong. Its Black War-Gray matchup was kind of negligible, right? Because you couldn't bottom deck the Black War-Gray, but you could suspend it. Now Black War did still have that redirect, which was sort of prevalent, but Bloomlord gets bigger anyways. So it really, really depends. I think the biggest thing is a lot more people are going to be playing this deck now and looking at it now that we've had these alternate formats. So Examon. This one hurts me because the meta was pretty much consumed of Grandas and Black War before, Examon was S tier. Because if you played either of those, it was just a buy, basically. It was so free. The problem is, with Black War gone, Grandas is still an incredible matchup for Exa. Almost unwinnable for Grandas. But Melga and the rest of the decks that I think are going to be in S tier aren't. They're very hard for Exa. That being said, if we go and look at the A tier decks, Exa doesn't have very good matchups into these either. I still don't think Examon's quite B tier. I think it's still a very good controlled deck. And it might be a little biased. I'm going to put it in A tier because I think this deck can still do a lot. But it is no longer the meta slayer that it was. Diaboromon. I don't know if anybody's played Diaboromon in a minute. I don't think this deck gains or loses anything by Black War being hit. I'm just going to throw it in B tier. Maybe C tier. We're going to put it in C tier. I don't think this deck's good. Mother D-Reaper. Let's see. Black War was a problem because it can attack unsuspended. It still can do that. And so can WarGreymon. It's probably a B tier deck. Probably right here. Galantmon. Literally like S tier for the Ultimate Cups. I don't think this deck's going to be that crazy after Ultimate Cups, to be honest, guys. I think it's probably going to... I think it's still A tier. Because one of the other decks we're going to talk about that's an S tier is a very, very good matchup for this deck. Or it can be a good matchup. It depends on the players. But the other stuff in S tier sort of beats Galantmon pretty hard. I think Galantmon's probably somewhere like right around here. It's an A tier. Probably right around there. BEELZEMON. So the star decks will be legal for the next regionals and before the ban list. Really the main shift. This deck is an S tier. This deck is incredible, guys. Now, this isn't the BEELZEMON you play in that deck. You don't play this blast mode. You play the new one. But that deck can turbo its pieces so quickly. They'll have like a 6 on turn 2 and like 30 cards in trash. Very strong. And if you want to deck that deck out, good luck, because they have a tamer that allows them to put a card from their hand on the top of their deck, allowing them not to deck out, which is very strong. That being said, we sort of have a triangle here, right? Because Grandas, I think, is so Melga, I think, has a pretty good matchup into BEELZEMON, and then BEELZEMON has a rough matchup, I think, into Grandas, in my opinion. And then, Grandas and Melga, right? Jessamon always has like this really high ceiling, right? Like Jessamon in the hands of a good player is probably always S tier, but Jessamon itself, like in the hands of like Joe Schmo from locals, probably like an A tier deck at best. This deck has so many crazy lines of play that's really hard to justify where to put Jessamon at any given time. Imperialmon's a deck that sort of, well, like it's fallen off a little bit. Imperialmon always has this really aggressive style that's pretty strong and I think can put in work like under the right circumstances. That being said, I think it's sort of fallen off from grace, right? If we look at these top A tier decks, I don't know how good Imperialmon fares into those, so I'm going to put it in B tier for now. Top of B tier. I think this deck's very sleeper. Blue Flare. I always feel like Blue Flare is super good. Like I always put it up here, but it never performs well. Ultimate Cups, it's doing very well right now. But outside of Ultimate Cup, like we gain one card, right? We gain Greymon, and then if you want to play the Yuga engine, you can. But if we look at the other matchups, right, like Melga, okay, like that's a pretty decent matchup. Grandas, I think, can go back and forth. And BEELZEMON, I haven't been able to test that, so I can't speak. But in theory, I think it should be pretty 50-50 still. So, like, I want to put this deck in S tier, but I'm not sure. We're going to put it in S tier. I actually think Blue Flare's going to do it this format. I think Blue Flare is always so close, and I think we're going to get it. Crossheart, X7, Shaman, my boy. I think this deck's super strong. However, into these 3 decks, it's tough, right? Melga, they're going to bounce your dudes with material save. You're going to cry because you're not going to get to save anything. Grandas, they're going to swing through all your security. If they don't hit a tamer or they don't hit the right tamer, you're sort of screwed. BEELZEMON, again, sort of untested waters, but in theory, they're not going to be too scared because you're blowing up their dudes with X7. Well, cool, I'm just going to grab them back. Like, it's not that big of a deal. For that reason, I actually think Crossheart's going to be an A tier deck. I think it's still very strong, and the right player can probably beat these decks, but the deck itself, I don't think is quite an S tier deck. Old Force, however, I think is an S tier deck. I think we have at least 3 blue S tier decks this time, guys. Old Force is so odd. This deck is either the worst deck I've ever seen or the best deck I've ever seen. It's ridiculous. If you get 2 Renas and then full stack, I don't think there's a better deck than Old Force in the game. But if you don't see the full stack or you don't see like 2 Renas, then this deck is unplayable. That being said, I think somebody somewhere will see a full stack plus 2 Renas in almost every single game post this ban list, and evade is a very strong keyword. So we're going to put Old Force up there in the S tier. Also, being able to bounce cards is very strong, like I talked about with Melga, right? Because Black Ward's losing some bounce protection, and they're going to have to make sacrifices in order to fit new protection in. Bouncing is still, in my opinion, the best form of removal. Tsukumon, Now, guys, this is wild because Tsukumon is a loser from this ban list. Tsukumon had a very good Black WarGreymon matchup because it no longer made their Digimon Black WarGreymon and made it something else, so their effects were all irrelevant. And now Tsukumon, like, none of these really care about name, right? Yeah, none of these really care about the name, so Tsukumon doesn't do anything. That being said, Tsukumon is now like a C tier deck. I still think it's probably the best C tier deck, but funny enough, I think before in my last list I had it like B tier because it actually had a super good Black Greymon matchup. Machinedramon. I think this deck's definitely going to see a rise in popularity just based off the Ultimate Cups and more people having this deck and having played that Ultimate Cup format. So popularity always plays in a factor, right? Because we're going to see more people playing it, so more people topping. But also, people are realizing this deck's sort of just like budget Black Greymon, right? You have that redirection, you have protection, it's very strong. Actually, this is an A tier deck. I think it's right there, somewhere in between Cross and like Beels and WarGrey. I think this deck's very good. Black WarGreymon. Oh, how the mighty have fallen. It's not B tier. It's still an A tier deck, guys. Probably like right here. I still think it gatekeeps a lot of decks out of the game just because of how this deck naturally functions, and losing Greymon X isn't like crazy. If you can still get into this Black WarGrey X, that's what really matters. It's just going to have a little less protection, but you're still going to gatekeep almost all these other decks out of the meta just by this card existing. Mirvamon. I've been trying to play this deck, and I don't know. If you guys have been tuning into the streams and stuff, links in the description down below. As always, we stream almost all of our videos live. Mirvamon is really good. Like, the ceiling's really high. It's super fun to play. But evade, right? Like, Old Force evade sucks. Blue Flare's sort of a buy because you can just kill your own things, so it doesn't matter. Beels is really hard for this deck. It's just this deck, but faster. Grandas is 50-50, and Melga is kind of hard because you want to delete, you don't want to bounce. And then Melga, if they're playing the EX Melga bottom decks, which is even worse. So we're going to put it top of A tier. Like right here. Like right here. Like right here. By Machinedramon. Wherever Machinedramon ends up, it's right there. I think it's still a very good deck. Galacticmon, sort of the same thing, right? It's sort of like Machinedramon, where it's like budget Black War, but I think this deck's worse. I think it's like a B tier deck. Something like this. I don't know. It has some decent pressure. Hot take, Mastemon is definitely an S tier deck now. This deck is very good. I think it's very pilot dependent, similar to I think how a lot of these decks are, right? I think BEELZEMON's going to be a very pilot dependent deck. I think to an extension, Old Force. I think Mastemon's going to be a very pilot dependent deck. However, if we see some of these better Mastemon players pick this deck up during this format, I think it's going to do very well. Chaos Degradation, very powerful card. But also, like, Mastemon was very held back by Black WarGreymon. It could not really do a whole lot with Black WarGreymon just, like, trashing their security and all this stuff they didn't want going on. But now, like, the rest of the format's sort of your playground, right? Like, you can sort of just ignore what these other decks do and just sort of do your Mastemon combos. And I think this deck's very good. Ancient Greymon, this deck's weird, right? Because, like, if they see their pieces, and, like, they just win. So, like, sometimes this deck can be S tier. But also, like, with BEELZEMON and Melga, probably B tier. I'm going to put this deck in B tier. I don't think it's, I think it's a little too slow. And finally, Bikmon. Guys, I don't know. This deck always randomly does well. And I genuinely still have not read these cards. I think it's really funny what it does. Like, I know the idea, right? You Digicross 5 with 5 different, like, dragon things. And you get all these cool inherits, and it has a rush. Like, that's cool. But realistically, this deck has to be the most bricky thing in the world, right? I cannot imagine this deck has any consistency. So that being said, I'm going to put it above Ancient Greymon because it's probably just this deck, but better now. Because I imagine you can do this, like, if you go second turn 1. Right? If they give you 3 memory, Digicross with 5 other things in your hand and your Bick, and I think that's, like, game. If I know the cards right. Like, I think this deck can just randomly win on turn 2. Which is funny, but very inconsistent. So let's reassess the tier list, guys, before I make any final decisions. Melga, S tier. Grandas, S tier. The S tier is not really in any order, right? Like, I genuinely can't tell. Like, I think this is probably the closest I can get to an order, but I could really interchange any of these first 3. Actually, any of these first 2. I think Grandas has a little harder of a time versus these two. But just because they play a lot of security bombs. Pretty much all of these are going to be playing security bombs, except maybe Ulforce. I actually think Beelstar should probably stay A tier. I think Beelstar acting as sort of the gatekeeper of this S tier makes sense, right? With what we have going on here in S tier. We have all these very powerful OTK decks and then like 2 decent control decks. But Beelstar is being like this pure control deck for the most part with like a really strong push turn with the Nailbone. Makes sense to sort of gatekeep. Crossheart is one that I find really hard to justify putting in A tier. I really feel like this deck should be up here. Maybe switch places with it and Ulforce. But I feel like Crossheart definitely struggles against Melga and like maybe like Grandas. Nah, probably not Grandas. Melga and like not Blue Flare. Melga and Mass they for sure struggles against. Yeah, we're going to move it up to S tier, actually. I think it actually has a pretty good matchup into everything except Melga up here. Ulforce, I'm actually going to move Ulforce down to A tier. Now I think about it. Maybe, yeah. And then Mirvamon, I think this deck, again, same thing with Beelstar. I think it's super powerful and has the potential to be S tier, but not quite there yet. And so I feel like these first 3 are definitely borderline S tier, but like more like gatekeepers. And then the real A tier starts at like Machinedramon, like it's budget, Black WarGrey X, very good deck, Commandra, Jesmon, Hydra, Gallant, Examon, and Black War, sort of gatekeeping that B tier. So yeah, this definitely makes sense. Bikmon, and then like we have like these random OTK decks down here in B tier. These sort of wall decks, right, with the Galacticmon and Venusmon and Mother, and then some other just like generally pretty decent playstyle decks. C tier sort of we get into the bad stuff, right? Like I wouldn't take any of these to a big event. And then Eosman is just Eosman tier. Like this deck is so bad, guys. Please don't play it. Alright guys, if you liked the video, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and check out the links in the description down below to find other ways you can support me and check out more ways to view my channel. That being said, all of our videos are recorded live. This one was recorded live over at twitch.tv/TruePainGaming. A link to that will also be in the description down below. Go check that out, drop a follow, and I will see you all next time. Bye.